This is an overview of various types of physical and non-physical entities according to my research in consciousness. Some of what I say here is not going to align with what you've read or heard elsewhere. And if that confuses you, I recommend you take both what I say and what others say with a grain of salt, and go out and do your own research, gaining your own clarity, so that you find clarity as to the overall nature of reality. Clarity feels empowering. A person who has heard the truth, whether that truth is pleasant or unpleasant, will generally feel more uplifted and stronger. Various religious cults and sects, as well as the cult of scientific materialism, like to promote the idea that human beings are the only ones around, which, as you intuitively know, is nonsense. There are countless other physical and non-physical beings in the universe and beyond. There are beings at low levels of consciousness, some of which are malevolent, and there are beings at high levels of consciousness, which are benevolent, and everything in between. The nature of the universe is not too much unlike the nature of Earth, where you find the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. You'll find the enlightened and those who pose as enlightened. You'll find the free and the slave, the rich and the poor, the righteous poor and the unrighteous rich, the righteous rich and the unrighteous poor. What I'm saying is that each and every variation that can exist does exist. Anything you can imagine exists in some form, otherwise you couldn't imagine it. Our mind-based education system bypasses the larger nature of reality, and neither our scientific institutions nor our religious institutions sufficiently train us on the larger nature of reality. Accordingly, there's a lot of confusion and misinformation out there on who is who. Even the authors that research it and look into it sometimes get it wrong. And who can blame them? I've sometimes gotten it wrong myself. The eyes with which we look only perceive a tiny percentage of all that is. There's so much out there we do not yet know or only vaguely know. What I do know, however, from personal experience, is that these are the planes of existence. The physical realm, the astral realm, the spiritual realm, and the infinite. I've already gone into detail on these planes in my video, The Nature of Infinity. Humans exist simultaneously on the physical, the astral, and the spiritual plane. Currently, we are interested in merging humans with artificial intelligence, or robots. We are trying to create a hybrid or an android. This is called transhumanism. Proponents of transhumanism claim that this is the next step in the evolution or progression of humankind, the next level of consciousness. But as I've written before, this kind of incarnation into virtual reality, into ever increasing depths of physicalness and artificialness, is not actually a progression or evolution at all, as widely claimed, but rather a deeper descent into the physical. Our merging with computers and robots would actually subvert a human's free will, as well as further our ignorance of our inherent spiritual powers. This has already happened to some extent in that our electronic devices have replaced and supplanted spiritual abilities. Take, for example, Google Maps, which has replaced our spiritual sense of spatial orientation. Search engines, for example, have replaced intuitive asking and intuitive knowing. The focus of will and attention is replaced by receiving images from screens. So it may come as a surprise to many listeners that I don't actually support transhumanism wholeheartedly, because I'm aware of the nature of consciousness and our spiritual reality. On a similar note, I do not seek life extension in the body, because I know I am not the body and never was. After my physical body dies, I wish to ascend to the next level of the game. These life extension and AI philosophies make no mention of the spirit or the essence of self, and that it's actually a good, natural, and desirable thing to pass away and move on. There are, in fact, higher realms of being beyond the body. The idea of extending life by merging with robots is a materialistic idea that could only be embraced by people who have forgotten their true nature, and people who have forgotten their true power and what their energy is capable of, and then seek to replace that lost power with technology. That, of course, is not to say that technology is bad. It's an extension of who we are, not a replacement. Hence, the danger of merging with robots is the loss of free will and further enslavement into the illusion of physical reality as the ultimate reality, which it is not. Another one of the great misunderstandings of our time in this kindergarten we call Earth is that the entities on the astral plane are extraterrestrials. Many of them are not. Some of them only pose as extraterrestrials. Some of them are mistaken for extraterrestrials. I guess in the original sense of the word, they are aliens, but not so in the contemporary sense of physical beings coming from another planet to visit and explore. Most of these entities don't actually have physical bodies, they are non-physical. So rather than calling all of them extraterrestrial, it would be better to call them interdimensional or astral. Some of them are semi-physical, others can appear as if they were physical, but most of them can only be perceived in an altered state of consciousness, or when you've left your own body. A good example of this are the so-called Greys, which have been glorified as extraterrestrials, as space visitors, of superior intelligence, and there are hundreds of movies and books on them. They're viewed as those who are piloting the flying saucers or UFOs. But this whole mythology around the Greys is inaccurate in my view and from my experience. The Greys are actually beings of the lower astral realm. And also, in my view, and according to my research, most of the UFO aircraft you see in the sky are also not extraterrestrials, but rather government aircraft. So one of the hints that the Greys are lower astral entities are that they appear to most people while these people are on the verge of sleep, fully asleep, or in a state of trance. Another clue that they are lower astral, which means non-benevolent, non-friendly, is that they impose their presence upon humans. Any entity that forces its presence or imposes itself on you cannot be said to be benevolent. No matter how many books are written on how they are misunderstood, how they're just different than us, and that's why they impose. Non-imposition is a universal law of positive beings. These so-called Greys are known for abducting people and experimenting on them. That's not something a highly advanced alien race would do. Some of these so-called alien abduction experiences are memory masks for sexual abuse events, which may or may not involve the Greys. This is evidenced by the fact that throughout the literature on so-called alien abduction, there's a lot of sexual experimentation or experimentation on the sexual organs. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that there are no extraterrestrials. In this universe alone, there are trillions of life forms. What I'm saying is that most beings that pose as extraterrestrials on Earth are actually astral beings who have been toying with and tricking oblivious humans for thousands of years. The reason ETs do not generally appear on Earth is because there's a non-intervention treaty for our planet. The reason for the non-intervention principle is so that human beings can grow and find enlightenment on their own accord, in their own time, and of their own free will. This is a free will planet where the law and the rule is that you can only experience something if you give your consent or permission. And that contradicts the idea of aliens intervening and imposing. Any ETs that therefore do intervene do so illegally. Another supposed extraterrestrial race that a lot of authors have written about are so-called reptilians. These too are, in my opinion, not extraterrestrials, but lower astral entities. The lower astral realms are generally populated by what humans would consider negative beings. Some of them are moderately benevolent and playful. Some of them are energetically neutral. Many of them have both good sides and bad sides, just like humans. But amongst those of the lower astral realm, the intentions are generally negative. Why? Because of the nature of contrast and polarity. And because these entities have a long history of negativity due to their own choices, conspiracy theorists have written about so-called reptilians extensively, but what is sometimes misunderstood is that these beings are actually non-physical. They exist in another dimension as compared to ours, and they are certainly not to be revered as superior to us, much less the providers of arcane knowledge or the saviors of humankind. The lower astral realm is generally dense and unpleasant. I've written about that in my books Levels of Energy and Journeys in Spectral Consciousness. At this level of consciousness, energy is always gained at the expense of others. Lower astral entities feed off of human fear, shame, guilt, grief, hate. The good news is that if you keep your own vibration moderately stable, you'll never have anything to do with any of that. There are a lot of paranoid ideas out there, and paranoid horror movies, and conspiracy theories, and books about demonic possession, which make it look as if it's fairly easy to descend to those levels, but it's not. It takes a lot of negativity over many, many years to even get that low. Having clarified the difference between astral and extraterrestrial, let's now look at some actual extraterrestrial beings. These are examples I've taken from the internet of what extraterrestrials might look and feel like. And if they are at a stage more advanced than humans, they will actually look, sound, and feel the part. They will not impose on you. They will not show up at night looking creepy and weird, or doing weird experimentation on you. They will instead radiate beauty, humor, peace, kindness, wisdom, and intelligence. So, do such ETs come into contact with humans? Can you make contact with them? The answer is yes, of course, but it's rare. Why is it rare? Because you don't really need them for the evolution of your consciousness. In fact, you do not need any aliens, entities, angels, guardian angels, ascended masters to expand in consciousness. Many of these ideas are typical symptoms of a humanity that have lost confidence in their own power. That's why I teach reality creation, in order to reduce dependence upon all of these external sources, not increase dependence. You'll have noticed that the most enlightened beings among humankind are generally independent. They are nobody's employee. Of course, many gurus and channelers and self-improvement teachers advocate making use of non-physical beings. Nonetheless, I'd like you to know with certainty that you have all the knowledge, all the wisdom, and all the love within. You are able to create your own reality to a large extent. You have been grossly underestimating yourself, and in calling for the help of aliens, you assume they can do something for you that you cannot. Once you grow into your true self and understand just who you are, it'll become much easier to communicate with higher beings, because you no longer appear as a beggar, but as their equal. The only source worth asking for guidance is the highest source in the universe. You are a miniature version of the highest source and have the ability to access an infinite field of consciousness and energy within. Beyond the astral realm, we find the spiritual realm. This realm is populated by enlightened beings, or beings of higher consciousness, some of which we call angels. I have written about these higher beings extensively in my book, Lives of the Soul. Many people assume that they are talking to or channeling angels, or what they call guardian angels. But this is, again, according to my personal view, research, and experience, a misunderstanding. The energy or vibration of these realms is so powerful that your nervous system, your body and mind, could not handle all that energy. Your spirit can handle it, but not the body. For this reason, these beings of light generally don't communicate directly with humans. So if there's an entity calling itself an angel, it probably isn't. It's instead a being from the higher astral realm, the mid-astral realm, or the lower astral realm. And this being that you're talking to, or that's talking through you, may or may not be benevolent. So these extremely powerful, bright, shining beings from the spiritual realm might intervene in the form of miracles. These could be mysterious and brief interventions to prevent accidents. It could be by sending visionary dreams, sending brand new ideas, or through synchronicity. Those are the most common forms of communication from this realm. But they very rarely talk to you directly, much less appear. Also, when a so-called deceased relative is talking to you, it's mostly not your deceased relative, but yet another entity posing as such. Why? Because your deceased relatives, they will usually linger for a few hours or a day or two at the most before they ascend to another realm. The realm they ascend to being fairly distant, their communication with you on Earth is highly unlikely. If they were actually able to talk to you through some medium, that wouldn't be a good sign, because it would mean they are stuck on the astral realm. But in most cases, it's an astral entity doing the talking, not your deceased grandmother. And the reason they know so much, including private information about yourself, is because they're not bound by physical laws. But that doesn't make them superior to you. Psychic abilities do not indicate a higher level of consciousness. I too have psychic abilities, but that does not mean I'm enlightened, merely able to switch off my mind. Indicators of a human or a non-physical being having a higher level of consciousness are not psychic abilities or crazy experiences or far-out psychedelic experiences, but rather the following qualities: love, kindness, warmth of the heart, an easygoingness, humility, integrity, presence, a sense of humor, and so forth. As I've said in my books, there are altered states versus higher states. Altered states are encounters with the astral realm. Higher states are encounters with the spiritual realm. Contrary to the recommendations of 90% of self-improvement teachers, New Age teachers, religions out there, and so forth, I do not advocate or recommend soliciting the help of aliens, entities, or angels. But if you do so anyway, in spite of my recommendation, then at least make sure that you're focusing on the most beautiful that you can imagine. Why? Because you will always attract those physical and non-physical beings that you resonate with. The fact is that it's fairly easy to attract anything into your life merely by focus. Some of you are into prayer. If so, I do not recommend that you pray to angels, but rather only to the highest source, after which angels may or may not be deployed. Some of you are into lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is traveling in the lower astral, mid-astral, or higher astral, and in rare cases in spiritual realms, where you can actually casually meet all kinds of beings in your non-physical state. This can be an enlightening or less enlightening experience depending upon what you radiate. Just keep in mind that positive and benevolent beings will be very clear on who they are. They will not ask anything from you or try to impose on you or try to cut deals or require a payoff from you. They will remind you of your inherent abilities and of the beautiful nature of the universe. All else is just another variation of the victim and neediness program that humans have been running for thousands of years. I've created this video as a means of education in an area where there's lots of confusion. If this video has provided greater clarity to you, recommend it far and wide. My name is Frederick Dodson. Have a nice day.